Thank you all for coming, first of all. We really appreciate having citizen input and communicating with the public. And this is one of the first times that we've had City Manager Town Hall series, and they've been valuable so far. So this is the second one that we're having, and it's on transportation. The first one was building and development. The next one will be parks and recreation, and the final one will be public safety. The June meeting time frame is about when we'll do the parks and recreation, and then we'll follow up with the public safety, probably August. So thanks for coming. What I'm going to do really quick is I'm just going to go over a short 15-minute presentation to go over some different items and projects that we're looking at. And I'm not going to take questions right now because the different projects that we have around the room are very different and very complex. But I am very happy to talk with you individually offline and answer any questions you may have. And we have our business cards in the back. Please don't hesitate to call any of staff or any city council. So where are city council members in the room? If you could stand. Councilmember Smith, Councilmember Kumar, Mayor Kilgore in the back, Mayor Pro Tem in the front, Councilmember Vance, and Councilmember Trecker. So, really glad we posted that quorum notice now. So, thank you all for coming. The council members that are in the house also will be able to answer any of your questions. They're well versed on these topics as well, and looking forward to hearing from all of you. So I'm going to go through kind of a high-level overview. I'll go through how we plan for transportation as well as different projects that City Council has asked an engineer to review. So council member and city staff believe that transportation is one of the most important functions that the city offers. We take this very seriously, and this affects several departments in the city, not just one. In fact, most of our departments have something to do with this activity, whether it's pedestrian access, safety of the roadways, or planning for these roadways, or maintaining them. So the Building and Development Services Department and the city engineer are the department that begin this process with planning. And we have Joseph Molise, the assistant city manager, and the Building and Development Department reports to him. And we have Aaron Carr, the director of Building and Development. In the back, we have our city engineer, Paul Duncan, here, and we have Charlie Sullivan, our city planner. They're all in the Building and Development Projects Department. And they review each project that a developer brings into the city of Lakeway and analyze that for transportation needs against the city's thoroughfare plan. So the reason the city's thoroughfare plan is important is because it is a plan that is adopted by ordinance by city council, and any development project that comes in has to be reviewed according to those standards. The next department that helps us with our roadways is public safety, and we have Chief Cohen that's here this evening. So if you have any questions of Chief Cohen with regard to speeding or safety or any kinds of issues with pedestrian activity, parking, those kind of things, please go visit the chief. He would love to hear from you. I thought I saw, there you are, Lieutenant Gavitt at the back as well. So thank you guys for coming, and they will handle public safety for us this evening. Then we have the Public Works Department. That Public Works Department is headed by Dale DeLong. He has been with the city for 26 years, and I think he knows the roadways as well as anyone. He could tell you what has happened in all the different roadways over the years, so we have a valuable resource with him. He is in charge of maintaining those roadways, any kind of infrastructure with regard to sidewalks, drainage, And he has a team of 11, and his public works department is the only public works department on the South Shore in western Travis County. So we provide a valuable resource to the residents as well as our partners that live next to us. So even during the winter storm, our public works department was helping out Bee Cave because they couldn't get a contractor out to do some of the sandings on their roadways. So his 11-person department works very hard, and we appreciate them for the maintenance that they do. So let's start with the planning. Planning begins, of course, with a transportation study, and I think I saw Judy Donahue is in the room. She headed up a committee in 2019 that studied different projects around the city, and they identified several projects and took a lot of public comment on that. And we used all of the information that they gathered to move forward with that thoroughfare plan I discussed before. And the City Council adopted that thoroughfare plan, the first one the city's ever had, in 2020. That's an important document. Many cities, most cities, have thoroughfare plans so that when a developer comes in, there's a standard that they must be held to whenever they build city infrastructure. Out of that thoroughfare plan, we have future roadway planning. Future roadway planning, this includes the schematic design of those roadways. If they're a collector, if they have to have sidewalks, how large the sidewalk is, how many lanes that will have, if it's a median, if it's divided, it's all laid out by each road that is planned in that thoroughfare plan. So that's how we begin our roadway planning. Then let me back up. This one's an important slide. Okay, let me go into why that document is important and how it's affected us so recently in the developments that we've had here in the main center of the city of Lakeway. So for example, this portion is the section that is the Lomans at the square, headed into a roundabout that will then connect to the Stratus property that goes through here, and this is the HEB. This is the police department. The city has constructed this portion of the road. It ends right here. This section is Tuscan Village, the last part of Tuscan Village. The City of Lakeway City Council adopted a road phasing agreement just recently because they know that this project, that this developer has come into City Council and just got the preliminary plan approved for this, and has estimated that they will likely be finished with construction of that portion of the roadway by November 2023, I believe is what they said at the Zoning and Planning Commission. So what we didn't want to have happen is a stretch here that wasn't constructed yet. So City Council worked an agreement together with this entire area so that we would have a contiguous roadway all the way through here. Then we get to the Stratus property here. They're required to build this roadway, and Stratus had an open house a few months ago, presented their project. We have not seen that project come back in for it to go through the Zoning and Planning Commission process and then to council, but we're expecting to see that come back. So that's how that is all laid out in the thoroughfare plan. So that's why those kind of planning documents are so important. And then city staff begins to work with all of the different landowners. Now this area in particular is difficult to coordinate because you have so many landowners in this area. There's 13. So we have a street here. This is Loman Spur. This is where the roundabout will be. And this is Burrell. Some people call it Barrel. Some people call it Burrell. I don't know. Maybe we should just rename the street so we can all pronounce it. The only section of roadway that has not been already dedicated is this small triangle right here. But the thoroughfare plan requires the owner of this property to dedicate that at development. So that's why those plans are so important. So we begin to coordinate all of the timing of these projects that need to go in to fulfill this transportation network in this area. Then after all those roadways are built, and they're public roadways, it falls upon our road and bridge department, is what Travis County calls it, and we call it the Public Works Department here. And they maintain those roadways. The way they maintain those roadways primarily is through a pavement assessment every 5 years. So every roadway that's a public roadway is assessed every 5 years according to its condition. The way that the City of Lakeway has paid for these assessments, as well as the improvements on these roadways, or we call it overlay projects to make those roadways last longer, is through a 0.25% sales tax. Now, the entire sales tax in our area is 8.25%. When you go buy something, it is an 8.25% sales tax. 6.25% of that goes to the state to fund state operations, and 2% of that goes to local governments in the area. So 2% is at the local government level, and a quarter of that is dedicated for the City of Lakeway roads. And that generates about $800,000 a year for us to be able to maintain our roadways. It makes sense to me philosophically when I think about sales tax and roadways, because people that come here that may not live here and purchase things in the City of Lakeway are still paying for the use of those roadways through the sales tax and through what they're buying. So the projects that we have here around the room this evening are projects that have been identified by staff and the public and through the thoroughfare plan. And all of the black box text boxes that you see are representative of these projects, and you'll see the boards around the room. The other project that we have is the 620 Widening Project on here, and we have the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization here to take any questions that you might have on the funding of that roadway, because we know that funding has been deferred. So they're here to talk about that if you have questions. They're also here to take any comments on what they call the TIP, which is their transportation plan for the next few years. So we would like for you to provide your input to them on the TIP as well as the 620 project, and they're here for that. We also have the project manager from TxDOT for the 620 project. So he will be able to answer any questions that you might have about the design of 620 when it's widened, and what stage in the process that they're in. So we welcome our partners Campo and TxDOT here with us as well. This is the schematic design of the 620 project. It is laid out on the table over here if you have questions about any intersections or any sections that you're looking at in particular. The next project we have, the next few that we have, I think the next 5 that I'm going to talk about, are really maintenance projects. They're not any new roadways. We'll get to those at the end. But these are projects where we have aging infrastructure in the City of Lakeway. This one is, you know, the dip on Lakeway Drive. This is Lake Shandong, the Shandong Lane. This is the dip where Hearst Creek comes through Lakeway Drive, right here. There are 3 corrugated metal culverts there. And if this picture was bigger, you can see it on the board. You can even see the water that's seeping underneath this culvert. So these are in desperate need. They're rusting out of replacing or fixing. There are 3 options that the engineers have identified to fix this issue, and they are over, where's the culvert? Culvert section over here. So you can look at those options. The other culvert replacement project that we have is on top of the Lake Drive. This is Lakeway Boulevard, and this is top of the Lake Drive. And you see the culvert replacements right here. In my engineering term, you can see how these are squished. That's not how they're supposed to work. There's also some erosion underneath here, as well as the erosion of and rusting of the corrugated metal culverts there. So there is a project that will fix that as well. We want to make sure the integrity of that roadway is strong. The next one is the resurfacing projects. We have 3 collectors in the city of Lakeway. That would be Lakeway Boulevard, Lake Loman's Crossing, and Lakeway Drive, that have been part of the city's infrastructure for a very long time. Lakeway Drive and Loman's Crossing were built in the mid-1960s. Lakeway Boulevard was built in the mid-1970s, and this is a fun fact. I didn't know this until recently, but Lakeway Boulevard used to be called World of Tennis Boulevard. And then we have Loman's Crossing that was widened between Lakeway Boulevard and Ranch Road 620 in 2000. So these roadways are anywhere from 20 to 50 years old, 40 years old, and they are needing some resurfacing. And the deal with road resurfacing, and we call resurfacing, it can be a mill and an overlay, or just an edge mill. So there's all different kinds of resurfacing that can be done depending on the road base underneath and how eroded that might be. So we did pavement assessments on all of these collectors that are in this area. And according to this graph, this one should be more pink. That's poor, which is this color. But the intention of this part of the graph is whenever the infrastructure gets to this point on the age curve, that's when it costs about $1 per, I guess, $1 for that kind of fix. But once this infrastructure gets older, it's going to cost you 4x to fix it once it gets down into this serious level. And we want to catch that whenever it's up here at the fair level before we hit that steep decline. And our infrastructure is all this yellow you see is at the fair, and we have some that are already hitting this steep decline where it's going to cost us 4 and 5x to fix it. So we want to make sure that we're being more proactive in our road resurfacing. So we also have some pedestrian improvement projects. This is a pedestrian improvement project. This is Lakeway Boulevard here. I know this is kind of dark to see, but this trail, of course, you all know that the trail is on both sides of Lakeway Boulevard. And then there's this dip here where it's difficult to get from one side to the other. And we have long talked about how do we get that connectivity for pedestrians in this area. So the engineers have come up with 3 options on each side and then down the center. These 2 have a little bit different difficulty because at some point you have to cross the road as a pedestrian if you're not in the center. So that causes a little bit of safety concern that we would have to address somehow.